Chill here with Sirius Talis Moon. Now, the Moon is applying to oppose Chiron in Aries. Mars that's ruling it is in 11th degree. And Sun is 18 degrees. Okay. In Aquarius, Ascendant ruled by Mars, midheaven ruled by Mercury. 29 degrees Virgo, midheaven. And Mercury ingress to Pisces, which means it's beginning to apply to conjoined formal out. Well, somebody needs to hear this story. The karmas that involve Saturn and Mars. In India, I think it was in India, they have caste systems, so it's kind of like a class system. And the people in certain castes, they get away with harming people in lower castes. And there was a crime organization. And this head of crime organization, he would rape and he would murder and so on. And there was really nobody that could do that, that could do something about that because of this class system. And then one sudden day, 200 people of that lower caste murdered him. It wasn't euthanasia. Saturn is about to meet Neptune at the degree of real estate. Big shout out to Chris Brennan that talked about the Saturn Neptune as the time where they ban cults, or the time where secret societies leak. It's a real estate bubble pop. But it's not going to look like that because they astrally rape to get that real estate. And then they actually rape to get that real estate for some cases. And then the people that own estates blame it on the tenants. Those that run those mafias are smug because they have been raised to be getting away with that. And then Saturn Neptunes. And I talked about the desensitization. These people practice that since children. And they're tortured when they try to act. So Saturn Neptune is having to surrender the fact that there are accumulations to actions. In the big real estate secret societies, Mars in Aquarius meaning lodges. Okay, if Mars would be in Capricorn, I would say churches, monasteries. When we had the triple conjunction, okay, Venus, Mars, Mercury, Sun, quadruple conjunction, going to Aquarius, we had burned churches for Christmas in Amsterdam, Netherlands, okay, which which is it's not like the Vatican or Romania where we have 90% religious. No. People are asking, were there churches of Saturn burning? We're like, hey, these guys just do it as a ritual. Somebody had to desensitize. Burn the church. Yeah, we're proud of you, son. Now, here is the thing. Saturn, Neptune in Aries. Okay, secret societies, bubble pop regarding real estate. What real estate? Well, other than on space. Oh, there is this astrology clock in Chesky. I'm concerned for its well-being with this one. Yes, because Aquarius rules astrology. Um, Aquarius rules big techie buildings. Aquarius rules the banking that are decentralized in the structures, okay, of the banking, the real estate of the banks that are decentralized. Now, it was like, oh, the bank is going to explode. No, that's our housing. I mean, the bank is going to explode, but the real estate of that bank is also, for many people, that's where they live. Um, Public housing could be going boom, and any estate that those secret society of the real estate own or reside in means they're safety houses. But here is the thing. Addis is about killing the rapists. Wealth redistribution here means nothing if there is rape. And what do I mean by that? I mean by the fact that those that are rapey will have their bubble pop because Mars is also to do with rape. The real estate that they thought to gain by rape. I have been seeing this for at least 1-2 years. The real estate that people thought to be gaining by rape, okay, by raping someone, they're gonna go boom, or someone's gonna go with what the wealth that they've been promised. Now, this is also the people Saturn rules debt. It's also the Robert Caro, the Moses Caros, I think, of the world. When I mentioned the power broker, thanks, Ruta, um, was where they basically eradicated New York to rebuild it. Those that were invested in that laser, okay, here they have a bubble pop. Because it means that their investment, Saturn rules bonds and stocks, their investment goes boom. Hospitals, of course, but particular hospitals where there was secret societies and ritual abuse. And like, Sheila, that's all hospitals. I'm like, okay, Chiron taught us to be our own doctor. What do the people that need a surgery do? I don't know, and I could be one of them. With Saturn Neptune at the end of Pisces, we were missing epidural. We were missing the Clonex, which is the thing that people take to calm themselves down. It's the euthanasia and the anesthesias. Okay, Neptune is desensitizers. Saturn, Neptune desensitizers are missing. Unfortunately, this is. And it's kind of like, hey, usually when there's a very big war like Neptune in Aries, desensitizers are missing. Not nice thing. Um, and this one could necessitate the use of big radiation weapon that would give immediate death. Okay, my mother just told me the Iranians claim to have a missile that can ruin, one missile can ruin entire country. I'm like, Mama, how do you call that type of missile? And I said, well, that's the most humane death. If it's one missile goes boom and everybody dead, that's better than war without anesthesia or euthanasia. Now, Neptune does have a dual effect to it. With Saturn, there's always the question, where do we put the boundary that Saturn brings so that something can grow? For example, Saturn in Pisces has put the boundary of ritual abuse to religion. Your religion, whichever religion, cannot be ritually abusive. Saturn in Aries put the boundary on rape. Your sovereignty cannot, first of all, if rape violates sovereignty, just like ritual abuse, but from a different perspective, we don't look at the religion, we don't look at why you do that, we look at the fact that it negates identity, sense of self, and creates inflammation. So to put the boundary, which means Saturn is death, Mars is rapists, okay, is to do the work of Aries with Saturn. If we ban rape-based secret societies, regardless of their real estate, we also ban the type of private corporation, Saturn Corporation, Aries Private, that negates sense of self. Okay? If your private corporation negates people having sense of self, housing of their own, but it manifests as real estate, then Saturn here rules. Saturn Neptune could be dissolution. Think about 1911 when Standard Oil was dissolved by the monopoly rules. Aries Saturn could be monopoly, one world organization. Neptune is the dissolution of, particularly around economy, okay? And health. Huef. Huef is what we know, but also what we don't know, what the secrets. Um, Saturn Neptune can have a deep state notion to it, and Mars rules bloodline. There could be entire lineages dissolving and dying, okay? Mars is blood, Saturn is lineage, Neptune is dissolving. Mass death. Neptune, Saturn is mass death. And I was seeing that as well. Who's mass death? Lineages of rapists. Okay, my grandfather lost his entire family but him and his brother in the Holocaust. My mother kept me away from my grandfather. We would come to visit them, we wouldn't be in one room alone. What is his granddaughter tending to? Now, the Jews, the trafficked Jews, made the Holocaust. Okay? They trafficked their own, and then they put the rest of the people in concentration camps, looted their stuff, And they would put the Jews that were working in the Swiss banks together. Okay, it's extortion calls logic. The bank would tell to everybody what money to the Nazis as well as to the Jews. But the Jews that worked in the bank and were trafficking people, that was a different story. And this was the Jews that were trafficking Jews, just like the Palestinians were trafficking Palestinians. If you saw after genocide, Mama Taliban back in Gaza, somebody trafficked that Mama Taliban throughout the entire time in Gaza. I don't think the IDF was that caretaking. When an Israeli goes to rape a child in Thailand because there it's legal, that is on tape, and then that Israeli has to tell the female watchers that they didn't say anything when they saw 7th of October invasion. I said, think Pearl Harbor. Who do the extortion cults in Israel extort? But how do they extort? Without pedophiles, it's impossible to extort. So they would manufacture pedophiles. Is that unique to Israel? No, I just mentioned Thailand. There's this video running about this smug Israeli girl that says, "My money builds your country." Now, she's wrong. But the money of the men that come to rape the 12 years olds and younger girls in Thailand, their money and their extortion definitely built Thailand. You say, what money built Israel? I just mentioned the Jews that trafficked the Jews created the dead camps. Just one girl that survived trafficking, Israeli by Israelis. And Madam trafficked her. She exposed the Madam 52 real estates. Some of the real estates go like an entire street. That's now when she wanted to receive public housing, she was rejected. Why? Because the real estate is now at the extortion courts, funneling everyone's money, and then Israelis go outside. They thought they were going to the army to protect their countries. You say, so did the Nazis. Who will hunt the Israelis so that they wouldn't even think to travel the world if not the extortion cults that take also their public housing? Today Israel, tomorrow Palestine. Yemun is applying to the ascendant of Israel, and Chiron is opposing the ascendant of Israel. People talk about the Jews, was done also in their churches and mosques. And indigenous religions. It cannot be colonialism without human trafficking. Sedna, 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 sedna. So those type of bubbles, okay, the real estate bubbles and the rare earth minerals bubbles that were created by rape are going to bubble pop. The desensitization real estate bubbles. Okay, think about Saturn, Neptune in the 90s. It was the definitely minerals bubbles, but also the big corporations of the state, the bureaucracy of the state, which was the mythical image of communism. It wasn't communism, it was an oil company, but it was, okay, the mythical image of a conglomerate of countries. Why money went missing? There was debt. Saturn is debt. Where did it go? Extortion calls. So is here. People that are in debt, the property taxes. Okay, I hear in real estate circles, where you see real estate videos on YouTube, you hear literally 2026, they're gonna get you for what you did with real estate. So I don't know what people do with real estate, if they write it on the name of other people or, um, okay, any scams, which I said before the first ingress. Um, with Aries, we have to be really cautious. What is our motive to do something? Because with Saturn, it's going to have long-term implications. Now, Aries tends to be impulsive as well. The rituals that were made to try to bring about events that people already did the shadow work regarding of can really backfire. If somebody was trying to make somebody kill themselves by being psychologically abusive or rapey, they might end up suicidal instead, because those people already understood that the reason that they were thinking to unalive themselves was because they were raped and because they were ritually abused. Saturn and Neptune in Aries can also bring a new form of euthanasia. Okay, something missing, something is created instead. And this would be euthanasia that shuts the nervous system. Would be very focused um, that the medicine Neptune will shut the nervous system down, because it would need to shut the nervous system, the inflamed nervous system being shut down. But also we would look holistically at were there programming, because Aquarius is programming. Was there suicide programming before we give euthanasia? One of the most painful topics to discuss. Um, Saturn is also something that takes a duration. So those are things that were, the last time Saturn was in Aries probably would have been, if we're talking about 2026, 7, 8, 28 years ago. So this would be 2007, 7, 8, 9. No, that's 20. Yeah. Wait, no, 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 no. 28 years. No, 1990. 6, 7, 8, 9. It's the 1996, 7, 8, 9. There was also the ingress of Neptune to Aquarius. So for me, I did not go to IDF because I was suicidal, and then I declared um, basically that I don't work in Sabbath, and then I could not go to the IDF. It wasn't my idea. I alone probably would have died there. I probably would have, killed myself or something. Um, but inside, I knew that I don't want to obey orders that I don't understand. Only years later, I would learn that Mars matures at 28, which is with Saturn return, and usually people go to the army way younger. Um, I felt that I was too angry to make decisions rationally, and so I didn't see point. And I said, people are not combatants, then they're raped in the army, and I don't have combatant skill. Okay, like my fitness was not to the level of combatant. Um, and I did not want to, and I was thinking about, the Second World War, of course. I said, well, but I felt helpless. I felt too helpless to do anything about that. And it was my parent that said, over my dead body. And they knew that the minute I have a gun, if somebody's going to sexually harass me, it's going boom. The entire the entire basis goes boom with the daughter. So um, years later, Saturn would be in the other Mars sign, which is Scorpio, and then there would be Demeter in Academia. I think with Saturn would already be in Sagittarius, but okay, my Saturn return was my first degree, and Saturn would probably go on my Uranus or something. Um, Either that or it would go, because it was 3 years or 5 years, it would go all the way to Capricorn already. And then there was, basically, I was writing before the Me Too. Um, and I was thinking about the fact that certain things that didn't happen in the army, it's kind of like smallpox. When you catch it older, it's worse. And so I'm like, well, the things that I didn't deal with, like the people that I didn't assassinate in the army, I need to expose in the academia. And again, the issue was there was a case of sexual harassment in the army when I was in high school, and my mother knew that putting me with a gun would end up really bad. I mean, good thing, bad thing, who knows, but I would probably take my own life as well. Um, Simply because of the rage that this is a world where I even had to do that, that there were even rapists that I had to kill. Um, no, but by the way, nobody was thinking about Palestine back then. It was after the murder of Yitzhak Rabin, so nobody. Okay, it's kind of like, hey, the guy that tried to make peace was assassinated, by probably the very extortion calls, um, but that was not even like, oh, occupation or anything of that sort. We were too young for that. But there was a youth. I went once to a Judenreich. I don't know how to call them. Youth movement, and they tried to justify the murder or the assassination of Rabin, because there was another assassination of a guy that thought to deport the Palestinians, Trump style, and his name was Gandhi, which was. And then I was like, I remember that in high school, it was like, it was the death of Gandhi, and And I was like, well, he was thinking to do transfer. Like, like what was he expecting there to happen? Um, and then the teacher asked me to get out of the class. It's kind of like the Shah was becoming already too religious before Ali Khamenei. And then there was this youth movement that tried to justify the murder of Rabin, so I felt very confused. Um, all the world felt very confused by my own clarity. Here's the thing. Now, if they would deport extortion cults alone, probably the remaining civilians could live with one another. Um, yeah. So those were the days of Mars. Those were the days of Mars in Aries. I'm gonna. Oh, I did. I tried to do something with braid. I tried to braid my hair, and I did four braids, and I felt tired. And then everybody thought that I have a Nazi cross on my head. And the teachers had to advocate for me. And they were like, she's such a good girl. She's such a good girl. She's a good student. She's in science classes. And it was like, could you unbraid the braids? Like, did you know what? It was like, no. It's just like, oh, I got tired trying to braid my hair. And so that was. So that was my high school story. And there was the thing with the shirt because I had a button shirt and something told me to button it all the way through. I did not know what it means, but in the army, I wasn't in the army, but in the army, it means that a person is signaling that they're going to unalive themselves. So I think it was school shootings o'clock. Before Chris Brennan aired his episode, I had this. Well, when did we have the fraternities and sororities and everybody rapes everybody with all those rituals, then the inner, because they get also associated, so it's kind of like the inner thing goes boom, and it's like, yeah, school shootings. Because that was the school shootings, was in academia. Fraternities and sororities o'clock. Um, you were like, oh my god, it's a school shooting. You weren't saying that when you were raping people. All these people in the fraternities and sororities, they were killing one another. Somebody had to get desensitized. Bohemia, La Bohemia. And I think somebody had to get desensitized. It's going to be. It's going to be the new dumb fuckery. And so if I take it back in the years, it was the how about I didn't become an IDF. Now, I remember when I was traveling with my mom. I think it was also around that year. We met a Nazi person, and he said he was in the youth movement during the Second World War. And he says I was a young boy Nazi. They were traveling to Egypt with this big vehicle that can take any desert, um, and yeah, my mother had a conversation with him. She was like, they were indoctrinated to hate Jews. And I had the very best meal I had in Dachau Hotel. We were going to visit Dachau concentration camp. Um, of course, my mother was shocked at the amount of children that were doing Sieg Heil in the entrance. Um, I was already used to like people doing that weird shit, but for the older people, it was like, oh my god. Um, and then we were staying at a hotel there, not in the death camp. And it was the breakfast was something that I was definitely looking like the granddaughter of a Holocaust survivor. This was like the best breakfast ever. Um, and my mother was just like shocked. She was like, and how much I eat? And she was just looking at that and keeping silent because she was like, maybe there's something there. And it is my second house of food. So the ruler is in the ninth house at 22. So it's kind of like the best meal at the death camp memorial site or go at the hotel where we were staying there. Um, that was my Saturn in Aries. So um, yeah, 28 years forward. Um, trying to think of the themes. And by the way, not going to the army was like people were worried, like, will you have a job? Will you have a this? Nothing. I could get almost the best positions, but I did not agree to corruption, so I was suffering. In that high school, there were a lot of people that were giving up the army because they thought that it would hold them back from developing a career. Because most careers will anyway be associated with security, then um, then they would, you know, then they would basically that would be their contribution or whatever. Um, and I took French and not Arabic because, yeah, I had to take French and not Arabic so that I wouldn't end up in the intelligence. Um, so if you want to, okay, if you want to evade, first of all, it was the fact that the sexual harassment, there was a minister named Ramon or something that was sexually harassing a soldier, and the fact that it was exposed. Oh, and I was interviewing Borg. This was when I said, when I, basically the reason I did not have a press um, certification later, because in my interview with Borg, I was asked, they were trying to make me ask all kind of weird, pokey questions that are yellow pages. They're not really getting at anything. And I refused to. I refused to because when I interview a person, then that space is sacred, and particularly if he's a politician, like he's going to talk. he's going to talk. I don't need to make him talk. I need to honor his presence, and he'll talk. But people cared more about like petty things than probably because they had to contend with extortion calls as well. Um, and I think it was the Silvan Shalom and Judy Nir Moses when Silvan Shalom was in one of the first cases where there were, I think, 11 women complaining against him, and and his Missy said that they are drinking his blood. Like that's projection, but I didn't know about that. Like I believed the people that complained, but I didn't I didn't know about the bloodletting ritual. And I know where she lived because she used to live there up to the elementary school, or the junior high where we were going. And he was a minister of, I think, communication, and she was with the media, Yediot Achronot and Mariv. Before they parted, Judy Nir Moses Shalom is Moses' family, and which also would pertain later to the oil and gas they found next to Lebanon, maritime borders. Um, but that would already be in the subprime. Um, yeah, where I was working at McDonald's being a vegan, a vegetarian, somebody ordered a Big Mac and it smelled funny. And they're like, it smells like a dead body. And I'm like, has somebody tried to harass me? And I don't know how he left with his arm, but um, yeah. So, but Saturn here does rule. We want to think back to things that happened in 96, 7, 8. And say, what is the trajectory? What is 28 years forward to that? And we were traveling with our two dogs. Um, we weren't really finding a place to relocate in Europe. I remember 4 7th of October, they would tell Israelis, go back to Europe. And I'm like, we're trying. So now there is like the big deportations. They begin to separate Judaic and Christians. Epstein list is exposed. More and more Epstein related stuff are exposed. Um, Israel military is considered Nazis, Nazis in the world. And because they rape children in Thailand. It's like, oh, because they did a genocide. No, that was that they were extorted to do, but but it started with the fact that they raped children. That's basically what caused it. Um, like if they raped children, of course they were desensitized to do a genocide. Um, it was like, but surely the imams, whoa, da. We have Somaliland. Greenland, declarations of independence. Yeah, there was a person once that talked about astrological consideration for declarations of independence on NATO page. Had a conversation to do with Greenland. um, before the purchase, we were like, "Who was that person? Come on, who do you think was that person?" If I forgot my name, that would be that person that did that. So nothing that says declarations of independence more than Saturn in Aries. Um, there was a big traveling journey. Mom, you want to go to Europe? Um, and I had, oh, Saturn is limitation and Aries is iron. So I did not find a way to become vegetarian, and I know that eating dairies it would be stupid, but I did not know that back then. And then I had something like 13 iron or something. Um, and the doctor said, I mean, I was just, but that was, and then there was this pill that called Rakuten that did, that didn't improve upon mental phase. That model that gave me that. And yeah, I was working for McDonald's. I was vegetarian, but I was working for McDonald's, and then I was trying to. There was the chips, so I was trying to lift the chips, taking Rakuten. It's like my hand was not lifting, and then the guy that told me about that, 2 meters, looking at me, I was like, yes, of course. I was like, what do you mean? Why didn't you tell me that? It was supposed to take care of acne or something. I was like, this is like chemotherapy to acne. Then I stopped taking that. Um, Probably it added long-term damage to already all-consuming, and then I ate meat when it tasted like a dead body, and I said, well, and it was even a chicken. It was not really like there isn't much iron in chicken. So, by the way, you guys are probably curious about how I became a vegan. Wasn't in McDonald's. My mother was taking me to Paris, and we bought a toast, very tasty toast. Of course, it had ham. And my mother's like, but it's not, but it's pig. And I'm like, beginning to argue with her. And then she said, well, why eat, we can say, why eat animals in general? Why eat meat in general? And I actually applied. That's how I stopped eating meat. So, um, and then I returned with zero iron to eat something like chicken, which is useless, but then I ate liver and stuff. Um, so that was where um, the food issues, like there was a limitation to the iron in my body that necessitated being ignorant of other options necessitated me to not go further to death with with my food experiment. Funnily enough, right now I'm also contemplating this issue. So, food stuff is definitely going to be the ingredients in the food is something that's already being discussed. They want to do the cancer meat. I mean, the other one is also cancerous, but there was a time when I was volunteering in film productions and I said, "Do you want of Diet Coke and Coke? Do you want the diabetes or the cancer?" The diabetes causes cancers as well, I know, but that was that was the era. Oh, and you know what? When I was working for McDonald's, there were these New Yorker ladies that would come every once in a while, and they would order the double Big Mac with Diet Coke. And now I saw a nutrition that has good recipes for lazy girls, and she always flashes it out with soda. And I'm like, that ruins the entire meal. It ruins the entire meal. But I wonder how accurate could something be 28 years after. Um, yeah. Now, speaking of against the ritual abuse, Zumba rituals, which, by the way, somebody was doing the research on that in academia. She was LGBTQ, and she was like, she was so smitten, and I don't mean romantically. She was so smitten with the person who was trying to traffic me that she didn't even see what was going on because he was her rabbi when she married her wife. And um, So, and she was looking into the Zumbur rituals as from this, how should I say that? As though it's like a culture and everybody feels, and she was so idealizing of things. Like, she was so idealizing of brotherhoods. Um, just like that's their culture, or that they feel more united. But like, they rape one another and torture. It's ritual satanic abuse in the Armée called Zumbur. They're desensitizing from harming one another. And then, of course, there would be so many suicides. I think in 2007 there was also a discussion about the Zumbur staff, and it's a mandatory army. So this is, um, yeah, it would just be considered a part of their training, which is not. But that is, yeah, and in academia, some woman was justifying that with her research. Um, that is beyond sick, beyond sick. Um, Now there probably are going to be implications for many armies. Um, for the rape that was done in war. Now, in the Great War, it was two generations of men dead, and women. But um, Saturn is dead. Saturn is rocks. Um, Mars is war. So Neptune is dissolving. So identity is dissolving into tombstones, and Mars is also brotherhoods. Um, so it's death to the brotherhoods, basically, um, worldwide, because it's 0 degree Aries and then 1 degree Aries. 0 degree is the essence of every sign, and Aries is like the Great War. Um, so try to think when we had Mars co-present with Jupiter in Aries, because Jupiter is big and Mars is war. So the big war, um, it was in between the war in Ukraine and the war in Israel Palestine. And Neptune is, it's not a higher octave of Jupiter, but Neptune is mythical, which is why it is associated with Pisces. It's the higher octave of Venus, but it's mythical, which means we can also have the ideation of mythical women. First of all, we can have a reality check about their gender, not their sex. How many was Golda Meir, dude? By the way, because my face, my physiognomy is closer to Jews, then there were people that were thinking that I could be a dude. um, and I think it actually got entry to places or to circles, because um, but there are many people that we will find out they have a member. Um, okay, because I think about Neptune being the higher octave of Venus, and then in Aries, it's kind of like, well, we thought that this was a woman. um, Another thing can be secret women organizations. For example, this lady that exposed the madam is in Israel. They have 52 trafficking houses. She said that when she was trying to turn to the feminist organizations that were supposed to get her out of trafficking, they would define it as sex work and they would continue to traffic her. There was even a place that was called Academy, or her Academy, that so Red Umbrella is probably going to be exposed. Shout out to Alondra Montauk. Um, okay, those people that say nothing about us without us, but they traffic people and claim to help human trafficking victims. But the people that don't agree don't actually have a voice, and it's all under the guise of their voice being unheard. Um, I saw that in practice in academia. If a lady was not doing anything against attempts to traffic me and the humiliation ritual of her in front of me, where I was speaking up in her favor, then she's not defending any women under anything. She's definitely not abolishing human trafficking or rape in academia, let alone sexual harassment. I mean, um, so and those are usually women that were raped, tortured, mind controlled, and trafficked themselves. So they tried to get away from being trafficked by trafficking. Um, Supposedly under the guise of improving the conditions for women in sex work, which means trafficked women. But the money time, she wasn't really, she wasn't really. Um, and this was in gender department. She came from gender department, a lecturer. So, um, by the way, when I was speaking to against the humiliation ritual that she went through, um, then they named her as, I think, a student and not a lecturer, which was, yeah, which is kind of like they lowered her rank, and those people are very meticulous about those details. Like, I could have not noticed, but those people are very meticulous about the details. I did not even know that until somebody that was doing a statistical research about that topic found out, and they closed the case as sexual harassment against me, which prompted Sugar Free Lemonade. Um, that had the IDF symbol, and I didn't know it. That was um, so. That was the Me Too where Uranus and Aries conjoined in Aries, squaring Pluto that was in Capricorn. So I think we're going to have another chapter regarding that. Okay, what were the implications of, what was the implication of calling it satanic panic in the 1990s? Ice! And what were the implications of, the Me Too went to Safe October? Safe October. We were the people that did not agree to kidnap and torture people because while we still had some sense of self, we were speaking